Hey, 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 Max here, coming to you from Santa Monica, California.
Let's jump in. I'm excited.
I'm excited too. Thanks for being back on the Genius Life. This is your second time.
This is my second time. That's probably rare for your show, right? I mean, I should be
It's
very honored.
yeah, I guess it's relatively rare. I've had a few repeat guests. It's my goal actually to have repeat guests and not just be like a straight up interview show, but to be sort of a more conversational talk show where you have like people that the audience becomes familiar with, make reappearances and so forth. But
I love that.
yeah, but so you are back because, well, you're my friend, and so you're always welcome back. But you
Thanks, Max.
just put out a new book, which I'm super excited for. It's called Transcend: The New Science of Self-Actualization.
Boom.
That is a handsome book.
Thank you.
It looks great. Congrats.
Thank you. Congrats on your own new book as well.
Thank you. You have such a soft and delicate way of speaking. I really appreciate that about you.
Thank you.
um, so, uh, so yeah, your subtitle is very interesting to me. The New Science of Self-Actualization. I don't know if many listeners
Yeah.
of this podcast know this about me, but I actually double majored in psychology in college, and I was a big fan of Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
You majored in psychology twice?
I majored in psychology once, and then my other major was documentary
I know.
filmmaking.
That was a joke. You said you majored double. Yeah, so awesome. That's an interesting combination in which you've combined in your work, right?
Hmm.
I remember I've been on some of your pilots that never made it, but I remember you coming to my apartment. Do you remember that coming to my apartment in New York City and with your whole camera crew? I don't know
Oh
what
my!
happened with that show, but
I had forgotten about that.
do you know
Yeah,
what I
you're
mean?
right.
Yeah, that was all
Yeah.
psychology and then yeah.
Well, you know what it is? This podcast is like the ultimate manifestation, I think, of everything that I want to do in
Yeah.
life. It's a platform that allows me the opportunity to talk to brilliant minds,
Mm.
people such as yourself, but then also to have conversations with buddies. Not that my buddies don't have brilliant minds themselves, but like just a platform to have wide ranging discussions. That's the beauty of podcasts. It's not just for me, but yeah. So whenever I've had opportunities prior to the launching of my podcast, shooting TV pilots and so forth, I've always seen it. I've always seen them as opportunities to kind of like wrangle in my good friends who have something to say, and you're one of those friends. So yeah, that
I
was
love
I,
that.
I forget what we did that for, but it was cool. Yeah, I got to like interview you with like a whole TV production crew. It was awesome.
I love that. I'm trying to make my microphone like your mic. It's like coming up.
It looks like a serious mic.
It
Uh,
it is. I just invested way too much because I wanted to upgrade the audio quality of my podcast.
Audio
But
qualities.
I haven't figured out the exact like placement of it yet. But I don't want to concern your viewers with that at the moment.
You sound good. You sound good. Let me allay your
Cool.
concerns. Okay, so I'm pretty familiar with the concept of self actualization, but I guess like what is that for listeners who might be unfamiliar to the term?
Yeah. So self-actualization was a term that was used a lot in the 50s and 60s. Abraham Maslow, the humanistic psychologist, used that phrase a lot to describe becoming everything that you're capable of becoming. Well, not everything you're capable of becoming. What is most unique about you that you want to realize? The thing is, we have lots of aspects of ourselves that we share with other people. They're not particularly special. So if you say things like, I get lonely sometimes when I don't talk to lots of people, that's not the most unique thing for a person to say. Like that's we all can rally around that. If you say, I really like respect and I really like self-esteem, I like that feeling of self-esteem, I like that feeling of crushing, my work. Well, lots of people can identify with that. But if you say something like, I can play a violin concerto like no one else in the world, now we're starting to talk about self-actualization, right? Now we're starting to get there. We're getting somewhere with that sacred part of your soul, is how I would define it. It's very scientific. Doesn't it sound very scientific?
No, that's what. So what for you? I'm just curious. What for you is self actualization personally?
Yeah, the sacred part of your soul. Pretty much. I don't think Maslow ever quite put it that way.
No, but do you
But it's
play concert violin or like
oh
what's
oh, what's my own thing? What's
yeah,
my
what's
thing?
your own thing? Yeah.
Oh, well, in a lot of ways, it's the psychology podcast. It's just like you were saying, what is that this show for you allows you to bring together lots of different things. In my own way, I feel like the podcast that I've done for the past 6 years allows me to bring in my quirky personality, my weird sense of humor, my intellect, my love of intellectual debates, my love of helping others through practical applications all together. So yeah, for me, it's like psychology communication in a lot of ways.
I love it. So if self-actualization is at the top of the self-realization pyramid, as Maslow described it,
It
like
was.
it was, right. You've redefined it in your new book,
Yeah, it's
essentially.
updated. I updated it.
It's so cool. Well, I want to get to the updated model that you've
Okay.
created in your book, but what was the old model for listeners who are unfamiliar with that? Self,
So someone could,
Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
yeah, someone could Google it, and they'll see a triangle, a pyramid, and in modern incarnations, there's in the pyramid, there's toilet paper at the bottom, or Wi-Fi, is the most essential need. But in Maslow's model, it was safety needs, or sort of physiological needs, and then safety needs above it, and then love and belonging needs, and then esteem needs, like esteem from others, as well as your own sense of personal self-esteem, and then self-actualization was above it. And what I discovered when I looked into Maslow's writing is that he never actually uh, drew a pyramid in any of his writings.
Hmm.
A lot of people might not realize that this was just created by a bunch of uh, organizational psychology men in the 50s and 60s decided to create. First, it was a ladder with each of these needs, and then they had the man at the top with the flagpole, as the height of self-realization in the 50s and 60s. And then it was depicted as a pyramid, but I don't think Maslow ever really conceptualized it as a pyramid. And I think he tried to make it clear that human development was constantly one step forward, one two-step back dynamic. As we constantly go through life, we try to strive to reach our higher needs, but then we fall flat, and then we have to keep trying again. We have to keep choosing the growth option over and over and over again. But life is not about perfection, and it's also certainly not about. It's not like a video game, where you reach a certain level and then you're done with all the prior levels. It's all about integration. So I revised it in a number of ways, but one big one is that Maslow, towards the end of his life, argued that self-actualization wasn't the height of his hierarchy of human motivation. And in fact, the highest motivation we could have is self-transcendence, and using our self-actualization merely as a bridge to others, to helping others, to um, uh, not only realizing our full potential, which is how a lot of people view the end of the journey of motivation. But we can, as you may be aware, we're allowed to help the potential of others. We don't just have to worry our whole life about realizing our own potential.
Wow. Why was self-transcendence, do you think, the sort of pinnacle of his self-realization in his eyes?
He was, in some ways, it was personal. He faced a heart attack that he survived, but he had a heart attack, and just as to about 2 years before he did eventually die of a fatal heart attack. But when he had that non-fatal heart attack, he was perplexed about something. He was like, why is it? And he wrote this in his personal journals. How is it that I could go and face my mortality, which according to my old model would pitch me right at the bottom of the hierarchy, but instead I have such a great appreciation of life in a way that I never did before. I feel a transcendence of myself and a great connection with humanity and with future generations like I never had before. That was very perplexing to him. And he was thinking about that a lot, and it dawned on him that when he had come up with his theory of self-actualization, there are actually different types of self-actualizers. He realized there were self-actualizers who reached their full. They're like the run-of-the-mill self-actualizers, the kind you see in the high performance space on the internet, the
Mm.
hacking people, some of your listeners right now, and watchers, where they are happy just hacking their way throughout their entire lives and optimizing their body, and that's it. And then they die. That's it. That's their life, is optimizing their body. But then he realized there's a different kind of self-actualizer. He called them the transcenders. And the transcenders, he had a whole list of characteristics of them, which I have in the book. But one of the characteristics is that they're constantly motivated by values that transcend themselves. It could be the drive for truth, or for beauty, or for excellence, that inspires people, for meaningfulness in life. So just these kinds of transcendent values. And they're also motivated by peak experiences, the most wondrous experiences that a person can have, that makes us feel at one with the rest of humanity. And yeah, it's what he called the transcenders. And he said there were a different breed of self-actualizers. Do you see those two forms of self-actualizers in your own world and the people that you work with and stuff?
Well, the way that you were describing the self-transcenders makes me kind of feel like they might uh, have maybe an enhanced appreciation for the journey, whereas you were describing
That's exactly right.
previously self-actualization as people who are just content having arrived at, maybe a destination, whether that's certain biomarkers that they're trying to achieve in their body, maybe a specific body composition. But the transcenders, what they're in it for is growth and improvement and always striving towards excellence, but never feeling like it's an actual destination that one arrives at.
Yeah, I love that. You're a transcender, Max.
Am I?
Yeah,
I
I think
certainly,
so.
I certainly feel like a transcender. I mean, I definitely like my favorite things in life are uh, to watch myself get better at something that I suck at.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
But why? But why?
I don't know, because it's not like I enjoy doing things that I suck at. I actually
Yeah.
very much dislike doing things that I suck at. Um, but there are certain activities. I guess like the best example that I can offer is music for me. Like I started playing music in my mid 20s, and I was not somebody who anybody would ever want to hear sing. I couldn't play guitar, obviously, but I taught myself to do both. And and now and what I love so much about it is that even today, like I'm always trying to get better at my instrument, whether it's like vocally or with my guitar. And I just love that process. I love, hearing myself like practice a song today and recognizing that I'm better singing it today than I was maybe a year ago. And that journey to me is very fulfilling.
So that's your B value. Maslow talked about a whole bunch of values of being itself. That is the value that makes you feel most alive. You feel what makes you feel your existence? Well, that's what makes you feel your existence. We all are trying to do something to feel like we exist, and I think that's your thing, and it's beautiful.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I feel the same way about learning about nutrition and about health, and I love having my ideas challenged and feeling like I've just stumbled into a new rabbit hole full of unexplored ideas. And I feel that way
Mm.
when I discover a new musical genre that is that I have yet to explore. So yeah, I get a lot out of that. So let's yeah, I guess like what would be the most value to add to my listeners? I would love to kind of like, because I know that you're all about offering actionable tips, um, or maybe not. I saw you tweet actually recently about how some podcasts ask you to like give like really actionable takeaways, and you're not so thrilled with
Oh,
that.
yeah, yeah, fair enough. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean for that tweet to make you at all self-conscious during
No, it
this interview.
didn't.
But the thing is, my beef there is that sometimes it can get frustrating when I get really nerdy and excited about a scientific finding that
Yeah.
exists for the sake of scientific knowledge, and then people are like, yeah, yeah, okay, that's interesting, but like, how's that going to help me become Hack My Life. And it's just like, well, there's also a great beauty in knowledge
Yeah.
sometimes, in just learning and discovery. Not everything has an immediate, obvious application. There are people who are addicted to practical applications, and I think that that can become an addiction,
Yeah.
just like anything else. There's sometimes it's really interesting. Just no, if there's a physicist on your show, you're not going to ask Sean Carroll, the great physicist, yeah, that's great about how this orbits the universe, that sun, but how's that going to make me happy? But with that said, I do care very much about making people feel more, helping them live a more fulfilled life. But I really believe that the path to there's no one path to self-actualization. This is a big point of my book, a big point of my research. It's also kind of funny sometimes in interviews when I first make that point. It's almost like they're not listening to me when they then say, so what is the path to self? I just said there's no one path. So I know you're not going to do that, but I think to live a self-actualized, a transcendent self-actualized life means taking a deep examination of who you really are, not necessarily who you want to be. It's important to know who you want to be, but understand and have a realistic assessment of who you are right now and your whole self, and not ignore bits of yourself that you don't like. Don't ignore the parts of you that you may call the real me. Psychological research shows that the quote real me in people tends to be the moral part of them, the parts they like themselves. So that means that humans have a tendency to disavow things they don't like about themselves and say, oh, well, that's not me. But it is you, and it's all you. And really taking responsibility for the totality of your being, and pierce with deep awareness of all the sides of self, and figure out how you can live a harmonious, integrated existence. Because so many people go their lives fighting a world war within themselves. And again, then they die. And that's it. That's their life, is fighting the world war. And I really want to help people be able, in many years that they have in their existence, to live a harmonious, integrated inner life, because that is what creates the world. We focus so much on external conditions and privileged people, and non-privileged people, and oppression, and all these things that we focus on. I'm not saying that they're bad to try to address, but a lot of things can actually be addressed if we do inner work. And I think that gets lost sometimes in these kinds of discussions.
Totally, especially today. How does your new hierarchy reconcile the fact that the past couple of months have seen a lot of people struggling with kind of lower rung, I don't mean lower rung in the sense that they're not important, but just sort of at the lower end of the hierarchy, security, safety, financial stability. These aspects for many people have been sort of put on the chopping block because of the economic downturn, COVID-19, that whole crisis.
Yeah.
So how do we kind of see through that to these more abstract concepts of self-actualization and ultimately self-transcendence?
So in a way, you're asking, like, how can we keep our hope alive when there's so much uncertainty?
Yeah, I mean, at the base of, and I'm going to use the pyramid metaphor just because that's how I happen to learn it in college.
Sure,
But
sure.
at the base of the pyramid, we have being able to pay our rent and,
Mm,
needs like food and toilet paper and soap and stuff like this. And I think, many people have obviously faced financial hardship over the past couple months. And so it can be, I think, a little bit harder to conceive of reaching those higher
yeah,
rungs.
I hear you. I very much hear you, and I know that a lot of people are pitched into this state right now of psychological entropy, psychologists call it, of feeling as though there's just too much uncertainty, that it's kind of overwhelming, overbearing, and a lot of suffering. I lost virtually all my income overnight, and that's not doesn't feel good. But I think that a lot of the research in the post-traumatic growth literature shows that anything can be fodder for a consideration of new possibilities in life and new ways of seeing our reality and new ways of being that might be better than we were before. I think that in a lot of ways that there's really good opportunities right now for us to see and prioritize what really matters in our lives. What really matter? What are the things that I want to focus on exclusive to other things now? And what are some things that I can do if I hit the restart button? I do think it's important to discuss how to cope, and there are coping mechanisms psychologically that we can get into. Resiliency is really important, and cognitive distortions, and not doing black and white thinking, and all sorts of things you'll do when you go to a therapist and try to get help. But I also think that we must not neglect our higher possibilities during this time, and not forget that with pain you often get growth. That most of the growth doesn't happen when we're just coasting along mindlessly, or aren't don't take a time to pause or reflect on things in our lives. I see this as a good opportunity for a lot of people. Maybe they don't see it at the time.
Yeah, I agree. Why did you write this book?
I wrote it, as you know, way before the coronavirus. I never would have thought it would be so relevant as it is today. But when I set out to write it, first of all, part of it was personal. I was going through an existential crisis at the time, and also wasn't feeling whole. And I had to set a goal to myself. I said, when I publish this book, my goal is to be whole, to be a whole person. In fact, the original title of the book was "How to Be a Whole Person."
Hmm.
Um, but what I realized as through the journey, and it was quite a journey working on this book, what I realized is that that was a fool's errand, and that was a terrible goal, and that we're never whole, we're never fully whole, but we really can stop fighting ourselves so much, and we do fight ourselves a lot. But I felt so inspired by the writers of the humanistic psychology era, not just Abraham Maslow, who I focus on in the book, but people like Carl Rogers and Eric Fromm, and Karen Horney is a great psychoanalyst, a feminist psychoanalyst who challenged Freud, the first one to really go at it with Freud and his ideas about women and stuff, and these humanistic psychologists, Roll May I would put in there as well. People, I want to bring it back. People don't really talk about humanistic psychology anymore. I want to be a champion, modern day champion of humanistic psychology. And if people are like, well, what is humanistic psychology? It is no less an understanding of the whole person and what it means to live a vital life, an experientially vital life. What does it mean to live a life where you feel like you're living a full existence and you're actualizing your highest potentials in a way that makes you feel good, that you're proud of? And that's what humanistic psychology is. There are lots of other aspects of fields of psychology that focus on particular slices of humans. Like evolutionary psychology might focus on our what we have with other animals. But I'm really interested in what makes us uniquely human. We share things with other animals, but what makes us uniquely human, and then what makes you a unique human?
Hmm.
What, and I already asked you, and you answered that earlier about what makes Max a unique human. But I would really encourage all listeners of your show to really think about that for themselves and make sure they haven't been caught in some loop where they're performing some role or doing something in their lives that they feel like they should do, but it's not really what is sacred about them. A lot of people do that. A lot of people feel pressure to be goody goodies, or like do, this nonprofit, that nonprofit, so they can get social status for doing it. But what are the things that really truly, when you look into your heart, light you up?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I had Dave Rubin on my show recently, and
Of course you did.
yeah, and my listeners know. I mean, I'm apolitical. I mean, I have views that you might consider more liberal, some views you might consider more conservative. I just, I don't consider myself a part of
Yeah.
either of the
I'm similar. I'm
two
similar.
primary parties. Yeah. But I really appreciated his view, which it sounds like you're kind of on board with, that you really you owe it to yourself to be a free thinker and an independent thinker, and to kind of think outside of the box,
Yeah.
to use a cliche, but
Is that what he said? I should have listened to that episode.
it was a really good episode. I mean, I very much appreciate what he has to say, because I think there's a lot of groupthink today. There's a lot of herd mentality. There's a lot of people who, if they get offended by anything, and we know that people have just become so sensitive on social media, maybe because social media has made it so easy to broadcast the fact that you're offended. Whether or not these people are truly actually offended, it's made it very easy for people to like bring out the pitchforks whenever an idea emerges that they don't agree with, and then there's like this sort of like bandwagon phenomena where just everybody jumps on board, and it's what is at the root cause of cancel culture and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And obviously, people who do bad things should pay a penalty for that, but I fundamentally disagree with the whole like the cancel culture and the herd mentality and all that stuff. So, I mean, it kind of sounds like we're on the same page, but correct me if I'm wrong.
No, we're definitely on the same page. I've been thinking about it lately because a lot of people in the field of positive psychology talk about self-compassion, and they say, people just treat themselves harsher than they treat others, and you'd never treat a friend like you treat yourself. And I actually think that maybe that's not. I think it's kind of the reverse these days. I think people are being a lot more lenient about themselves than they are being about others. I think it's actually the reverse. And I've been trying to see if I can quantify what's actually going on here and which direction is it. But my perception with cancer culture and everything is that people are holding others to this perfectionistic standard they would never hold themselves to. Like people are like, that person just said that word or whatever, cancel them. I mean, would you ever want yourself to be canceled if you say that word? I mean, think about yourself. Like, if you were in that situation, would you want everyone to come after you? So it doesn't seem like we're terribly forgiving these days with others.
It doesn't seem like that.
It doesn't seem like that.
Yeah.
But you see what I mean? A lot of people in the self-compassion literature will say like, we're always so kinder to others than we are with ourselves. And I'm like, no, I don't know if that's true these days.
People can be mean.
Yeah. I mean, can we be honest?
Yeah. Yeah. People are so mean.
I think we should forgive and love.
Yeah. Yeah. I tweeted, and I got a good friend of mine, who's kind of a public figure, so I won't say who he is, but I tweeted the other day, I was watching Louis C.K.'s new stand-up special.
I saw that, yeah.
He's great at what he does,
Yeah.
He's my favorite stand-up comedian, and he has been for a long time. And I know that the allegations, that surfaced about his sexual proclivities are ugly,
Yeah.
But it doesn't take away from the fact that he's a brilliant stand-up comedian, and he was apologetic in his act for his acts, and yeah, and like at what point, should we publicly accept the apologies of people who've wronged and have acknowledged that they've wronged? So anyway, I tweeted how much I appreciated his stand-up special, which I thought was brilliant. To all you guys listening, I mean, I highly recommend checking it out. And then one of my friends messaged me that you're going to get a lot of hell for that, and I was like, bring it. I don't care.
Did you get hell? Did you?
I think like 2 or 3. I mean, granted, I don't have a huge Twitter following, but 2 or 3 people tweeted at me that, how could I say that about a woman, about a misogynist like him? Well, I appreciate his comedy. What can I say?
Yeah. So here's the thing. I believe that people should have the right to choose their own line of morality within certain parameters, of course. I
Right.
should qualify that. But and this fits within those parameters. People who am I, or who is some group to say, how dare you're not allowed to like that comedian? Like, well, who is that? Who are you to say that? Like,
F off.
let people decide for them where their line is in terms of them no longer appreciating the art or the craft. I'm not a fan of like of thought policing, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Um, it also sounds like the antithesis to self-transcendence, to bring it back
My book, yeah.
to your book.
It is. Transcenders have this way of thinking that transcends dichotomies. So there's a really cool phrase I love that Abraham Maslow talked about, dichotomy transcendence,
Hmm.
uh, where we stop at a certain level of human cognition and wisdom. We realize that all these things, there are so many false dichotomies we put out in this world, like good versus evil, like that's clearly good and that's clearly bad. That this is uh, well, male female is another interesting one, because it's like what you're not allowed to have a blend of both kinds of characteristics within yourself.
Hmm.
Uh, Selfishness is an interesting one. Well, what if you're selfish in the sense that what you love to do helps others? The word selfishness doesn't make any sense anymore. It's like there's a certain level of consciousness where you start to see the world and humans with frailty, and in a more nuanced, realistic, integrated fashion. And it's I call it wisdom in the book.
I love that. I mean, my obsession with nutrition and health is, I mean, in no small part motivated by the fact that I care about the way that I feel, the way that I look, how I'm aging,
Yeah.
and yeah, and the whole male female thing. I mean, I totally agree with that, because I mean, I have many attributes about myself that you might consider more feminine, on the feminine side. I'm not interested at all in sports. I'm not really interested in politics. I'm not into, and these are huge stereotypes for those gender definitions. So I'm not saying that
I know what you mean.
but yeah. So I love the fact that, like this more nuanced way of thinking. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. I've very much been curious about these kinds of questions, like what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a woman? Because I'm a humanistic psychologist, so all I can tell you is what is it like to be human? And to be human, to be fully human, means that you take blends of all the best that is on offer in humanity. And some of those things will be stereotypically male, some of them will be stereotypically female, but you want to be a fully human person, right? Isn't that
Yeah,
the goal?
totally. Have you had any detractors to your redefinition of Maslow's?
No,
No.
not detractors for that. I get detractors when I talk about more controversial topics like intelligence and stuff like
Mm.
that. But no, surprisingly, this book has been unanimously positive reviewed, and uh, except one person on Amazon gave me a 1-star rating and said, "I love the book, but I can't stand the cover." And I was like, "Way to judge a book by its cover."
What's wrong with your
But
cover? It's a very pretty cover.
I love the cover. This person didn't. They're entitled to their opinion, of course, but I took offense to them ruining my rating system just because of that. But anyway, yeah, it's been universally. My colleagues, psychologists of all sort of stripes have appreciated what I tried to do. I've been really pleased by the reception. If one of its greatest fault is that maybe it's not controversial enough. It seems like these days to get really well known, you need to be controversial. That's not my goal. My goal is not to be a provocateur. My goal is to unite us as a species. It'd be nice to see that goal be more get more attention.
Yeah. I love the you offer in the book 7 principles for becoming a whole person.
Yeah.
Can you share a few of those with my audience, Scott Barry Kaufman?
Yes. I have to open the book.
He's got to open the book.
Now these are exercises, I call them growth challenges,
Okay.
that I adapted from my course I taught at Columbia, So they get, people who buy this book get a special look, and they can take like a course, you know, with me just by reading the book. So I include things like accepting your whole self, not just your best self. Really, uh, really making like having acceptance and discovering aspects of your being that you might not like, and we are talking about that earlier. Uh, Also, learn to trust your self-actualizing tendency. I think that a lot of people, especially those who were raised in families where their needs were disregarded, and that they felt as though every time they said, "Well, I want this, I need this," the parents like, "No, that doesn't matter. What really matters is helping us." You can grow up to start to not trust what's really good for you anymore, what you really truly need. I think there's a process of really trusting your innate self-actualizing tendencies. Carl Rogers called them, that he argued we all have within us, but get very quiet and faint because we stop trusting it. So building up that, becoming aware of your inner conflicts, and I have a scale to help realize where we may um, be lopsided in our development. Uh, so there's nothing wrong with wanting to be liked or to, but there's a problem with having an extreme need to be liked. There's nothing wrong with having aggression every now and then, but seeing the world as a dog eat dog world, is at the extremes. Um, and so kind of understanding our personality structure and having some balance. The three main things that can get lopsided is we can have an attitude towards people and need to be liked. We can have an antagonism towards others and moving against people, which Karen Horney called moving against people. And we can have an extreme need to just be detached, moving away from people. Some of us might have a hair trigger at the slightest hint of commitment. And I'm not just talking about relationship commitment, but even a gym membership, like, those slightest thing that suggests, oh, well, I'm going to have to be attached to something. And really, like, striking a good balance of these things in our lives is really important. And striving for growth, not happiness. A lot of people might shoot for happiness, but that's a terrible goal. It'll constantly elude us. Happiness usually comes from the ride of growing as a whole person and making and really getting in touch with that most sacred part of ourself. And also harnessing the power of our dark side. That's a big one that I teach my students, in which there's a growth challenge on. And I didn't say like get rid of your dark side. I didn't say even accept it, just accept it. I'm saying actually harness it. Some of the greatest creators, that was my prior book, Wired to Create, with Carolyn Gregoire, on what creative people do differently. But one of the things that really creative people do differently is that they're not afraid of their dark side, and in fact, they even love it. They're all about it. They're like, oh, I'm feeling anxious today, or I'm feeling melancholy. Well, I'm going to take that feeling and put it into my art. I'm going to take that feeling, and if I'm going to the gym, I'm going to take that anxiety and aggression. I'm going to put it into my workout. It's amazing the power of our dark side that we can use for positive growth. I think that often doesn't get appreciated. The humanistic psychologist Rollo May called it the daimonic within us, and it's not the demon within us. It's the daimonic is neutral, so it's whatever is within us that has the power to take over the whole person, and it could be destructive for ourselves and others, but it can also be something that we can harness for optimal creativity. So we shouldn't treat any of these things within ourselves as, and again, this is dichotomy transcendence. This is a higher state of consciousness. You don't treat any of your feelings or emotions or motivations or drives as innately good or bad.
I really appreciate that. I've definitely, I feel that I've been able in the past to harness my dark side. As an artist, I went through, I think it was like 2008, a pretty bad breakup. It was like my first ever major breakup, and those are all pretty bad usually. And I wrote a bunch of songs after that. It was like this Cambrian explosion of creative output for me musically.
You're a
And
wonderful guitarist.
thank you so much. I appreciate that. Uh, and then obviously what I went through with my mom, which was the most heartbreaking, traumatic thing that I ever had, have, and will experience. That is what, you know, created everything that I'm currently doing. I mean, from my book to my podcast, my books to my podcast, everything. So yeah, I'm very grateful that I've been able to just sort of naturally, that I've always been pulled towards creativity, you know, during those times.
Yeah, I think you've done that right. You've done the hard work of integration, and it's shown. You've seen the fruits of it.
Are you familiar at all with Jiddu Krishnamurti?
No.
He's a writer, philosopher, spiritual guru, like the anti-guru, who's written a number of incredible books. I actually became familiar with him because I was a diehard fan of the band Live growing up, and Live's first album. Do you remember the band Live? They were like big in the '90s.
No.
They're still around. They're an incredible
I don't
band.
know any of this.
And okay, so they were probably, I mean, they are still like my favorite band of all time.
Wow.
In many ways, yeah, I credit them for shaping many of my sort of ideas about the world. Their first album is called Mental Jewelry, and it's based entirely on the writings of this guy, Jiddu Krishnamurti. And so as an angsty 16-year-old, I was like, who is this guy? And all he writes about, basically, I mean, his central message, he's long past, but he used to roll with like Henry Miller and like all those guys. They were sort of all in this clique, and he would write about his most famous speech is that truth is a pathless land, and that really the world is there is no separation between the individual and the world. The world is merely a reflection of who we are on the inside, and we all have that inner a-hole, you know. And the reason why there might be certain people, you know, at the pinnacle of public office, it's sort of what we essentially deserve at any given time, at any given moment. Whoever is there, you know, as elected public officials is who we deserve, because they are merely reflections of who we are internally. And until we deal with what it is that's causing this separation within us, then we're going to continue to basically have a divided world. And so that's sort of a convoluted way of, I think, describing some of his ideas. But yeah, Jiddu Krishnamurti, he wrote, I think one of my favorite books of his is it's short. It's called Freedom from the Known. It's a great book. Read it when I was 18.
Well, that sounds like something I would love reading while I'm doing CBD oil.
Are you into CBD oil?
Oh yeah, big time. I did some before our interview right now.
Did you?
Oh yeah, that's why I seem so relaxed.
That's awesome. So it relaxes you?
Yeah,
Huh.
big time.
I was some of my podcast episodes have been sponsored by a CBD company, and my listeners know I've always taken a sort of open-minded approach to CBD. I'll take a few drops like before I go to sleep sometimes, but I don't know what it's doing for me. I don't
Hasn't changed you fundamentally.
I don't think it's changed me fundamentally, no. But,
well, I'm very susceptible to placebo. So if you gave me a sugar pill and told me it'll make me a genius, I don't know, or that it'll calm me down, I'll feel calm. So I don't know how much of it is real either. I'm very like open to experiences. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is that personality trait? Is it suggestibility? You're highly suggestible, or is it just openness? Or
yeah, open. I'm just gonna go with a positive spin on it and call it openness.
Okay.
To experience.
Have you ever been hypnotized?
No, not to my knowledge.
Not to your knowledge. So, I mean, you would be a candidate for hypnosis, basically, because you're...
Interesting. I need to really think about that, because I know what I just said, but I am wondering also if I can also be skeptical of non-scientific, of things that I know are non-scientific. I did. I was part of a Darren. I was in Darren Brown, who's a magician. I was at his show on Broadway in New York, and there was a thing where he tried to hypnotize the audience, and I was like, nah, that ain't happening. So yeah, so I wasn't susceptible to that, but I don't know. I guess I'm weird. I'm
Interesting.
just like, well, I'm not weird. I'm like everyone else. I'm
Yeah.
complex. Yeah,
Well, but some people can have legitimately been. I've never been
I know.
hypnotized. I once went to a past life regressionist for work. I was when I had the job at Current TV, and I was sort of like a field reporter of sorts. The head of programming was a big fan of this. He had been hypnotized, and he had what's called a past life regression, where you essentially you tap into who you were in previous lives. I mean,
Wow.
now and then, it to me sounded like total woo, like total mumbo jumbo. But I'm not to take away from, like if people actually believe in it. I'm not. Whatever. I want people to have their if they're into that, then so be it. But I went, and the whole time I was just laying there like, what's going on? As he was like trying to hypnotize me, and yeah, it just wasn't happening.
So it didn't work. You didn't access your prior life.
No, I didn't.
Just think if you were open to it, you would have accessed your prior life.
I know. Would have been fascinating. So what are you working on now these days? Like, what's next for SBK?
Well, I'm really trying to take my podcast to the next level, um, in all sorts of ways. Really excited about new guests I bring on. I just had Coach Pete Carroll of the Seattle Seahawks
Oh
on in
man.
the latest episode, and trying to really understand the depths of human potential through lots of different perspectives, maybe a broader level than I ever have looked at before. I have a feminist pornographer coming on in not the not so distant future. Um,
What's a feminist pornographer? I mean, what does feminist porn look like?
so are we going to open up this whole?
Why
Is,
not?
is this where our interview is going right now?
I'm just curious.
Okay, so
What is it? I'm sure you've done your research.
no, I had the chat with her. It was wonderful, wonderful chat, and her name is Erica Lust.
Huh. Erica
Um,
Lust.
Yeah, she has a whole production company. She's revolutionizing the future of feminist porn. Well, it's in another way you could call it ethical porn. So she wants to make sure that none of the actors are exploited in any way when they're doing their work. But also she wants to make sure that you see female pleasure on camera. So it bothered her that so much of mainstream pornography was so focused exclusively on male pleasure. It was almost like the female pleasure didn't matter. And I have to say some of her movies are really hot. I mean, I have a free trial I'm giving people when I'm releasing this podcast. I hope people check it out. They might find they never loved porn so much, when they watch feminist porn, because it's very mutual. It's very you see a lot of like care,
Hmm.
and care can be hot, right? So yeah, it opened my eyes up to lots of things, and I enjoyed my chat with her. So the point I was trying to make is just on my podcast, I'm really excited about just talking about different parts of the human experience, and if I'm going to be an investigator of human nature, which I am, nothing's off limits to me. I'm just as curious about the psychopath as I am about the saint. You
Hmm.
know,
I love that. Where can listeners find your podcast?
at just thepsychologypodcast.com.
Awesome.
But
I've been on it once or twice.
you've been on it multiple times, and again, open invitation. Also, I'm trying to up my Instagram game. So if anyone wants to follow me at Scott Barry Kaufman on Instagram, I post no yoga poses. I promise you won't see any yoga poses of me, which you tend to see a lot of on Instagram. But you'll see humanistic psychology quotes and things to try to uplift us as a species, connect
Super,
us to each other. Yeah.
super important.
Thank you, Max. Thank you.
My Instagram really started to grow the minute I decided to stop trying to look cool and
Mm,
to start adding value to
I
my
love that.
yeah to my followers.
It's amazing what you've built up. You're an inspiration to me. So I look to that to see how I can best offer value. in that way.
Thanks, man. Well, yeah, you offer a ton of value. I don't even think I don't even think
Thanks.
I'm following. It's so weird how social media works. I got to come and check you out. All right. Well, we are just about out of time here. Is there anything that we didn't touch on that you want to add? I mean, I always like to ask that because sometimes I just don't. Maybe I've
Yeah.
forgotten a question or two.
Well, when I when I revised the hierarchy of needs, I have a new metaphor, and we can call it Kaufman's sailboat. So
Hmm.
instead of a trek up a mountain, like life is some sort of competition where, or ascendancy to rise above humans, it made a lot more sense to me to treat life like a sailboat. We need to have security and stability of the boat, but we don't go anywhere in a purposeful direction if we never open that sail, if we never open up our vulnerability to the unknown of the sea. So the thing with the sailboat as a metaphor for the good life is that, again, life is not a trek up a mountain, but it's a life to be experienced. It's a life to be integrated as a whole vehicle. You want to be the most powerful sailboat in the world, uh, for yourself. And I don't mean it as a competition, but you want to have a strong boat with no leaks, which is the need for connection, the need for safety, the need for self-esteem. But you also want to open up your sail and explore the unknown of the world with love and with purpose. And I argue that we can get these fleeting moments of transcendence, the most wonderful moments that make life worth living, when we're really sailing against the wind, or with the wind, in a harmonious way, as a whole unit, in the service of
SPK's
realizing the good society. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, SPK's sailboat.
Yeah, that's right.
That's adorable.
That's dope.
It's dope. Man, always love getting the chance to catch up with you.
Likewise.
Are you
Likewise.
currently teaching anywhere, or you're?
Yeah. Well, I'm creating an 8-week online course.
Wow,
Yeah, I've
that's
never done it before. I've never offered a course online before, and I'm like, I'm gonna do it.
all the kids are doing it.
Yeah, I know, all the cool kids.
Yeah,
It's about
it's
time.
it's important to be. I mean, especially for you, and like as an entrepreneur, as an educator, it allows you to change people's lives for the better.
Yeah.
By putting out your knowledge in a digestible way, but it also allows you to be financially self sufficient, which
Yeah.
both of those things are important. So I think it's a good
Agreed.
idea. I have not you know attempted to cross that bridge yet, but a lot of smart people have suggested that I like look into that. But I don't know.
Might be time.
Yeah, but I look forward to yours. I think that's gonna be
Thank you.
badass.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm gonna put details on my website in the coming weeks about that. But I love the opportunity to have this a more intimate sort of connection with people, be able to give them growth challenges, and see how they grow over even an 8-week span. I think we can grow quite a bit, in 8 weeks. It's quite amazing how much we can grow in such a short amount of time.
Couldn't agree more. Um, well, SBK, this has been really fun. Before I let you go, I've got one last question for you. But before that, just remind listeners where they can find you on social media and where they can pick up your new book, Transcend: The New Science of Self-Actualization.
So they can find me on Twitter at SB Kaufman, Facebook. Just type Scott Barry Kaufman in there. Instagram, we already said it, Scott Barry Kaufman. But the book, I created a link, Transcend hyphen Transcend. I'm Googling it right now to make sure it works. Transcend hyphen book.com will take you to the book part of, yeah, my works of my webpage and personal webpage. So Transcend, and then put the hyphen in there, book.com.
Love that. Awesome, dude. What does it mean to you to live a genius life?
Now I'm wondering what my answer to that question was last time I was on your show.
Yeah,
And
it changes
like,
sometimes for people.
it has. It does. To live your genius life is to be in touch with that part of your soul that makes you feel most alive, creative, and connected to the rest of humanity.
Love that. So good.
Woohoo!
Cool, brother. Well, thank you for jumping on. Stay safe.
You too.
And yeah, to all you guys out there listening, thank you so much for tuning in. You know, I love that you guys are here. Pick up SBK's new book. It's called Transcend, The New Science of Self-Actualization. Let me know what you thought of this episode of the show. You can do that by texting me if you live in the US or Canada at 310-299-9401. And yeah, I'll catch you on the next episode. Peace, y'all.